All right, everybody, welcome to the Comedy Post COVID-19 panel. I'm Jim. I'm going to be moderating this, and I'm so happy to get the esteemed people that you see here around me as part of this discussion. We have about 2 hours. We're going to try and get to every one of the topics that you guys have sent me questions on over the past few days. Excuse me. And we're also going to get to any questions you might have. If you do have questions, please type them in the comments, and we'll try to get to as many of them as we can. We've got a lot of stuff that we wanted to cover, and particularly where we are right now with comedy, what it's going to look like in the next couple of months, and then how it's going to come back, because I think most of the panel is assuming that it will come back in one way, shape, or form. Just I think we have some disagreements on timetable when we go around the room. Just very briefly, just so everyone knows who everyone is, we have Wilson McDermott, Dr. Wilson McDermott, who you may know as a comedian, but he is also a doctor of psychology, and he sits at St. John's University, where he heads their teaching department for that very fine subject, and he's going to talk to us about some mental health possibilities as we get here later. Leighann Lord is with us, and Leighann is a comedian for, well, the Earth Cooled, and then me, you, and Carole all started comedy at around the same time. But Leighann's been a comic for many, many years, and she's also branched out into public speaking, into hosting podcasts, into writing books. So we wanted to get Leighann's take on, reinventing yourself as we go along. We also have Andrew Tarvin, and Andrew is... well, two reasons why I asked Andrew to come here. One, because he is very big in the corporate speaking world, where he has his own company that he runs corporate events and facilitates corporate speaking. But number two, Andrew is also one of the first people I've met that have embraced the new technology and is jumping on not only using Zoom and other platforms like Zoom to fill in the void until we come back, but possibly creating new opportunities as we move forward. Carole Montgomery, who may be my first and most lifelong friend in comedy. Thank you for doing this with me, Carole. I met Carole at my ripe old age of 19 at Catch a Rising Star, and Carole is a master of just reinventing and finding new ways to make yourself relevant, most recently bringing women of a certain age to Showtime, and that is a very successful series. And I wanted Carole to talk about possibilities in television and in touring in the future. Al Martin, who most of you guys know, because most of you guys hounded for spots at his club. Al's been doing this for about 30 years. Brand new book out today, and I'm sure he'll tell you a little bit about it when we get started. But I wanted to bring Al here because Al not only has experience creating clubs, and he's got 2 clubs that are impacted right now, he's got both types of clubs. He has the larger type of club in Broadway Comedy Club where there is enough space that you can social distance and get some kind of an audience. And he also has the intimate venue, Greenwich Village Comedy Club, which would make social distancing harder in that venue, at least not enough people in the audience to pay the bills. We also have Deena Baikowitz, who is also a comedian, but Deena is an expert on branding and an expert on inventing yourself and presenting yourself to go forward, during the course of this pandemic, and to figure out exactly how to place yourself in the market so that when things break, you're in a better position to move forward. And Lori Summer, and I know Lori for a long time, originally met at Gotham Comedy Club, and now she is the manager of West Side Comedy Club. And I wanted Lori to talk about what she thinks it's going to look like as comics are trying to produce their own shows in venues moving forward. So I just want to start with kind of the first burning question that people keep asking me, and I love the phrasing on this email better than all the others. When will this hell end and we can all get back to work? That was my favorite way that somebody phrased it to me. So I want to ask you guys, do you think that in the New York area, at least, because that's where we're mostly centered, this is going to go on through the summer, past the summer? When do we see that this will open up and there'll be actual comedy club stages for us to get on again. Anybody want to tackle that first?
Yeah, I'll jump on board on that one. So
Makes
from
sense.
what I'm seeing, and I'm down in Florida right now, because my winter is usually in Florida, and now it's kind of, I keep thinking, why go back to New York? It seems like it's not really a hurry to get there. But from everything I'm studying, the press conferences, the webinars, from my attorney and insurance company and all that, New York is set to certain areas of it, the state, and we got to differentiate between the state and the city. Certain aspects of the state are opening up within the next few days, if they haven't already. Now, New York City has to meet 7 different metrics, and all the counties actually have to meet 7 different metrics: hospitalizations, deaths, a whole bunch of other stuff. New York is not projecting to go into phase 1, and there are 4 phases to reopening New York City and state until June 6th or thereabouts. It might even be June 13th now. I don't know if it's been pushed back again. So now the very earliest that New York City looks like it's opening into phase 1 is June 6th. There will be 2 weeks between each phase. And in that 2 weeks, they have to have 14 consecutive rolling days of decreases in the various metrics to get to stage phase 2. You know, some counties might reach phase 2 earlier. New York, in all probability, will be lagging a little bit because of the density of population. So if you were to extrapolate and move forward, let's use the conservative date of June, the earliest date of June 6th, 2 weeks between each phase. Phase 4 comes in somewhere in the beginning of August. That's if nothing goes wrong, there are no spikes, and we have to go back a phase. So I'm thinking the earliest for stand-up comedy is early to mid-August, more probable early September, and then at a reduced capacity.
All right. Now, for comics, here's the flip side of that coin, because most of the panel are comics. When will you feel safe being on stage? When will you feel safe grabbing the microphone that somebody you don't know whether or not they social distance in front of you has been there? Carole.
I'll take that quickly. I have some dates in the summertime that have not been canceled yet, that are out of town. So I am planning that if I do go to them, first of all, seriously, this isn't a joke, probably buying some kind of like overalls or like not a hazmat suit, but like a worker's, that I can wear, that's disposable, because I'm going to be on a plane. I'm going to wear gloves. I'm going to have goggles. I'm going to have my hair, like I'm going to do what I have to do if I have to travel. As far as going on stage, when this was starting, and I'm sure you guys did, there was a lot of you that might have done the same thing. I made a joke about this. I said the only good thing about this virus is that I can finally clean the fucking microphone. You know what I mean? Because and that's the other thing. And I think Leighann, we talked about this. Todd, my husband's already said, we're all getting different microphones. We're all going to have our own microphone. At least that's what we're going to do. Lane, my son, had played a gig with somebody who got it, and thank God he did not get it. He did not get the COVID. So that's the number one thing. So I think we have to be proactive to it. I think that like I said, I'm going to have my own mic. I'm going to have wipes. I'm going to have hand sanitizer. I'm going to wipe the mics down and everything. So I'm not worried about being safe on stage, because I'm going to take that into my own hand. Now, is the audience going to feel? Are we going to have sneeze guards in front of the audience? Now, how is the audience going to come back and not feel, you know what I mean? That's the thing. And I have no problem performing with people if they're wearing masks. That's just my, so that's what I'll do.
All right. So, Wilson, this is a great question for me to ask you. An audience mindset, the people that are going to be frequenting comedy clubs when they reopen, do you think that their mindset is going to be cautiousness, or do you think their mindset's going to be liberation?
By August and September,
yeah,
I think it's going to be liberation, but I think people who consider themselves vulnerable are going to be the more cautious ones. And not only people who consider themselves vulnerable, but people who are vulnerable to the virus will be the most cautious. And I think everyone else is going to just be kind of done with it.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's the attitude they should have. I think that's just what's going to happen.
Right.
All
Can
right.
I just chime in? Because
Please.
I kind of think that there's going to be a gray area. You know, I think people are going to feel liberated where they can go, but I also feel like there's going to be a lot of trepidation. There's going to be a lot of nerves when you're finally stepping in. And, you know, just speaking on West Side Comedy Club, it is a smaller venue. We only seat 110. Our social distancing, you know, it would be really difficult, and especially to sustain a business in that regard. I go along with Al. I think it's more probable that after Labor Day, that's when I think that we might see some kind of normalcy of people going back out into clubs. I think people are, you know, like not going to want to be in that closed in setting. I think they would be selective as far as restaurants and everything else that they will go to. But I, you know, and I'm the same way, you know, if someone's wearing a mask, I think that is going to be a mandatory thing for guests and audience members as well. I think we're stepping into an entirely new normal. How long I think that would last, you know, I kind of think that we're going to go into 2021 where we're still, you know, like wearing masks or whatever, if there's going to be that kind of normal for us before we get into going back into how things used to be, quote unquote. We're never going to go back. We're only going to go forward.
I agree with you, Lori. Never going.
Never.
That's never happening again. The sitting close, you know, like that's why Broadway is, Broadway isn't coming back until September 6th. And that's an if, because we've all been in Broadway shows there. Those the seats are so tiny.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
Go ahead, Al.
I think something like Broadway shows, they have a very tough dilemma, because even if by September they're able to open up at either 25 or 50%, you take a 1,500 seat theater, let's say, now 25% is suddenly like 375 seats. Can they afford to pay the ensemble of actors and the people behind the scenes, the carpenters, the people putting together the sets, and the musicians who all get standard union contracts? Can they afford to pay all that? That's not, those salaries aren't going to change. So those are fixed expenses. Unless they've gotten some kind of, even if they are to get some kind of concession from the owners of the buildings of the theaters, to pay that kind of nut with 375 seats, you know, I think it's going to be difficult from a financial aspect. And that's why I think you might, depending on what they can open at capacity-wise, you might continue to see Broadway shows not open up until there's either therapeutics or a vaccine.
Yeah,
just to piggyback on that for 1 second, Nederlanders do own the theaters, the buildings that the theaters are in, and they've announced that they're not going to reopen until they get the all clear to open at full capacity. That's the Nederland Corporation.
Right.
So there's a couple of others. But I did also, Carole, you wanted a quick follow-up?
No, I just was going to say Frozen's already closed. And Frozen was a hit.
And not coming back. Yeah.
And not coming back. Frozen has closed. The Inheritance is closed. There's I mean, for the people who are watching, my husband works on Broadway. Yeah. So we're watching it very closely because, you know, not only did I lose my livelihood, he's lost his livelihood, and my son's lost his livelihood. So if anyone has a basement I can live in, please email me.
The other thing we need to talk about, because we've talked about comedy clubs and theaters, the mid-range theaters, places like Shetler Studios already closed.
Yes.
There's rumors that Cap 21 is going to close, and some of the other studio space. I wanted to, Drew, you had something that you wanted to interject, and then I have a follow-up for you.
Sure. Yeah, I just wanted to speak to, at least on the corporate side, from the corporate market, you're seeing a lot of organizations like Microsoft have announced that they're not doing any in-person events until July of 2021 at earliest. And so I think you're going to see a lot of people that
Wow.
are extending pretty far out. I think for many organizations where liability is a big concern, a lot of it's going to shift to not a duration, not a set time, but based on advancements in science. So when we have an antiviral that can actually help to reduce the overall risk of the disease, or when we have a vaccine that reduces the risk of actually getting it, that I think is where you're going to see a lot of the change. Because exactly to Al's point and the other things that other people have mentioned is, how do you balance, bringing up and still having social distancing and not bringing people in versus just taking advantage of virtual, which of course we'll talk about, that doesn't, completely replicate everything. But I think a fully produced virtual experience for many things is going to be a better experience for the user or the audience than a 25% capacity, limited run live show in some cases. Because if you imagine, I've done plenty of gigs, especially speaking, where people are spread out completely and you try to use humor and it just dies in a vacuum. And that's going to be an interesting thing to have to balance within a comedy club, is if you are socially distancing, do you still have that same feel of a live show?
All right. So,
If I can I just tag on to that, just as far as like the time
Yeah.
frame, just really quickly? Everybody has to be like really honest and realistic, because when you're thinking about who are our audiences, and New York is kind of like, we're the ground zero for cooties. So can the tourists travel here? Those are our audiences. Can they travel into the States? Domestically, do they even want to come here? They don't even want New Yorkers going to their state. So are they going to want to come here? So there's just that like ground. You have to be honest and you have to be realistic.
let me get up to Leighann. You want something?
Yeah, and I think this follows very well on Lori's point and what everyone has been saying. I think there needs to be a level of honesty here. And the comedy that we grew up with and that we trained in is not happening now. It may not happen for a while. And perhaps Drew will speak to this later. I don't want to, step on his toes, but I think we need to learn how to get comfortable in our square.
Mm-hmm.
How, if you want to do comedy, doing it in a different way, and everybody's trying stuff. Some of it's not working, but some of it is. And I think there's no better time than to go out there and try this. What does online comedy mean? What does virtual comedy mean? How do I know I'm getting laughs? How did you know that when you started? So we've trained in a certain way, and now we sort of have to repurpose our skills. And there's no judgment, there's no fear, because no one knows what they're doing. We're all starting over, in that sense. But I think some of the hesitancy is, who wants to start over now at this age? I'm tired.
I do want to bounce around this one a little bit, because I want to bring Drew and Deena in. But before I get to you two guys, I particularly want to talk about this with Carole and Leighann, because you guys have kind of opposite mindsets on this. I know, Leighann, you've been doing every Zoom show you could possibly do, just like myself. And Carole, as far as I know, you still have not done one?
Nope.
Yeah, and again, it's when this pandemic first happened, I was absolutely on Team Carole. Like, I'm not doing a Zoom show. I'm not performing in a little box. I've actually found some freedom in this performance venue. That's where I want to bring Deena and Drew in a second. But for you two guys, I wanted to speak to Carole. What is your resistance to doing it? And Leighann, what have you found as the bonuses of doing these kinds of shows? Carole?
I'm still, what's the word? I'm still in
Leery?
shock. I'm in shock. No, I'm still in shock that this has happened. I mean, every day I wake up and I go, like, I don't know if you guys ever watched the Animaniacs, but when Pinky and the Brain, and every night before I go to bed, I go, what are we going to do tomorrow, Brain? And and Todd goes, try to take over the world, Pinky. But, because I still can't believe, like, I walk around and I go, I can't believe this is where we are now. So I don't have the wherewithal to do a Zoom show. And I mean, maybe I will at some point when I feel like I want to get back on some kind of jokes but I have nothing. I mean, I'm being as honest with everyone in the who's watching and who's on the panel. I have nothing when it comes to creativity right now. I feel so bad. Like I just don't have anything. I mean, I myself, instead of doing stand-up, came up and like I'm doing a talk show once a week called the Early Bird Special, which gives me something to do. But as far as writing jokes, because first of all, you know, especially with the internet, everything I want to write is going to be about what the fuck is happening, and everyone's doing that, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to be like everybody else. So for me, you know, you know this because people have asked me. They've said, "Please, we'd love to have," and I'm like, I'm not there. Maybe I will end up on Team Leighann and decide to do my Zoom shows, but you know what I mean? Like I just don't. I have no. You know, I look at my life before, like literally, my special aired the weekend of the quarantine. And I was on and I was on the Today Show the day before, and I walked by Rockefeller Center going, remember when I was on the Today Show? What was that, 20 fucking years ago? I mean, like, it just, I'm still walking around like it's a dream. So that's where I am. So not to bring everybody down, but that's where I am.
Yeah, and just before we get to Leighann, I think Wilson will speak to this later. I think a lot of people are where you are right now. I know for me, you know, and Carole can attest to this, I was suicidal the day the news broke. I had to be talked down from a ledge, and then you know all of my fight or flight genes kicked in, and they're like, no, fuck it, I'll find a way to make it happen. So again, it's different people in different ways. Leighann, and then I want to get over to Deena and Drew. What have you found the advantages of performing on this are?
As Carole said, and I will take issue with the fact that she says she can't be creative. This chick went from zero desire to have any interactions with tech to producing a weekly show. So I want you to take some credit for that. That is still being creative. That's just in another branch of the business.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not producing a weekly show. Yeah. Okay. So stop with that. Yeah, okay. But what I find is the need to create, the need to produce. I've got to do something. My reaction, you know, initially was to curl up on the couch because, you know, my sad days were, you know, dates were deleting off my calendar, just dropping off further and further out. I've had something cancel as far out as October, you know, and it's like, is this my life now? But I still feel that the need to write. And what I'm noticing and what comics are discovering who are doing these Zoom shows is that sure, yeah, you might talk about it for a little bit, but there's still other things going on in your life or material that you can repurpose and redo because people still need a break. So again, I almost feel like I did when I started, you know, just doing open mics. It kind of feels like that. I'm just giving it a try because it's an opportunity to do something. But and now that's just speaking specifically to the Zoom shows. Like my calendar last night, I'm like, how am I not in a square tonight? How did that happen? I was kind of mad, you know, because there's also that the pressure that we put on ourselves to be the same level of funny that we did in clubs. It's different. Yeah. But people almost just want community, and they want a chuckle or get the opportunity for them to take their mind off something. And the fact that I still get to do that, you know, sometimes that helps me. I'm being real selfish here.
Now, I wanted to pop down here to Deena because one of the things that's happening with comics, particularly the younger comics, you know, when I talk to Carole or Leighann or Laurie or Al, we've been around forever, and then there's mid-range like Drew and Wilson who've been around for a little while, and you're also brand spanking new. Like most of the people that have been contacting me, what can they do right now that will help them brand-wise when the pandemic ends and they get back into the real market?
My turn?
Yep, you.
For once, I'm not interrupting. That's why I keep putting myself on mute. Jim knows me. So, and I do want to say, I want to let you all know my perspective. So yes, I am brand spanking new to stand-up. I started it for fun exactly 2 years ago, June 11th. But my background is marketing Broadway and off-Broadway shows. 20 years ago, I moved to New York to do entertainment marketing. I was a theater major. So I transitioned from entertainment to corporate marketing to healthcare, back to entertainment to corporate. And Carole, everything you said about the hazmat and the protective gear, I have been wanting to do that my whole life. I've been a germaphobe forever. I'm a Leo. We like to keep clean. So my perspective is in some way privileged because I don't know the old way of doing stand-up comedy as a professional. I know it as an amateur. I know open mics. I've never done a bar show until a few weeks ago. I said I made my international online debut. But that being said, Jim and I met because of the pandemic. We met online at a virtual mic. We've never met in person, but like, you know, one day Jim's like, I haven't heard from you today. Are you okay? I speak to him more than to my mother these days. So, and the tagline we came up with together was for the Underground Comedy Festival and Fireball Friday was a celebration of laughter, hope, and community. And I keep going back to that tagline. Like, comedy is about laughter. It's about moving people. Hope is hope for right now to get through it day by day, for the future, and community, the comedy community, the corporate community, our community of audiences, the New York community. What was the question?
What can the youngins do right now that will help them prepare for when the pandemic is over?
Okay, this I prepared. Jim knows I'm a preparer. So, and I came up with an acronym. It should stay within my 2 minutes. I tend to go over. But looking at our brands and our networks right now, in the short term and the medium term and the long term, some things don't change. Like as Leighann talked about your material, right? Who are you? What is your persona? What are your topics? So looking at your content, I did an acronym, Fireball, F, focus, pick your topics, your platform, your social media, your persona, your content, your audience. That goes to your comedy. It just brings it to your market. I, intentional images and content that feed and reinforce your brand. So Leighann, you're known for certain things. Carole, you're known for certain things. And I completely agree with Leighann. Your show is something brand new and creative, and I watched it and I loved it. And you and I wouldn't have connected. I mean, I was always a fan. I saw your show on TV recently, but we wouldn't have connected, I don't know, if it wasn't for the pandemic. So, which brings me to our relationships, building relationships for now and for the future. Like Jim and I, we've gotten to work together, which is an incredible blessing in all this. People, comics of all ages, I will kind of say this is a broad stroke. Obviously, it applies differently to younger ones or new people like me. I'll take younger if I can get it. Your energy, your tone, your attitude. So there will be some people that will go negative, others that are hopeful, others that are, whatever your, that energy and that tone and that attitude. Also, engagement. It's not just about delivering content and delivering a message. And I say this as a trainer and a coach. It's how you engage with your audience. So using social media more and using phone calls and video and Zoom and chat functions to have conversations that we may not have had on stage, but you know, afterwards, where you go up and chat with the comics. And then your brand. There's so many places to reinforce your brand. It's everywhere from your social media profile, URL, your handle. Like Leighann, you have certain aspects to your, a very funny lady. Carole, funny women of a certain age. Lori, dancer, right? Jim, in exile. Me, fireball. We already have that. So we just need more ways to reinforce it, have it show up, put it out there and market it. And then our audience, I would say, especially for the younger ones, know who your audience is. We don't all appeal to everybody. Like Drew, I know your shows are clean comedy, which is why I can't do them because my topics are dating and sex. Like, you know, I'd like to do them at some point, but right now I'd rather stick to the nasty stuff because it makes me laugh and my friends expect it. So I know my audience. I know what they want from me. Lessons. What are we as comics teaching? What message are we sharing? And that's universal, whether it's about relationships before the pandemic, during and after, whether it's observational, whether it's whatever matters to you, those lessons that you give other people, how you help and support people now, and how you help and support your audiences later. That doesn't change. And then finally, laughter, we're comics, be funny. Like that shouldn't change either.
Yep.
So branding and networking, yeah.
So we get to Leighann and then over to Drew because I have to connect these two. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Particularly this is really for everybody, but for younger comics in the game, especially if you're under 5 years, I don't see why you're not still writing unless the pandemic broke your hand.
Yeah.
Seriously, the sources of information are still there. Your own life, the news, what's happening around you, getting those jokes out, even if they're just in your own notebook, getting the best of the best and posting them on your social media, getting your audience, growing your audience, getting them used to the fact that you will be posting something funny that at least you think is funny, or you're going to shoot a little video of it. How are you, as Deena said, how are you connecting with your audience? It's never been easier to pick up your phone and shoot something or go live.
Yeah.
And posting your best stuff. And what an opportunity to watch comedy. If you can stream and watch Tiger King or whatever it is, no judgment, why are you not watching classic stand-up? Why are you not on YouTube looking at the greats and seeing how folks have done it, seeing how this has evolved and finding out who you might be like, and seeing how it's done. The opportunity to do research is there and to learn from those who came before you. And those are the things that can be happening.
I just need to reinforce what Leighann said. Anybody that knows me knows that I write every day. I write stand-up every day. Come hell or high water. The day my mom died, I wrote stand-up. The day of, every day. Good days, bad days, I write. I got into a train accident in 2014. I lost the ability to read and write. I had to relearn how to read and write. Do you know what I did every day while I was learning how to read and write? I wrote stand-up. I didn't know what the letters looked like. I talked it into a tape recorder because once you turn the muscle on, it doesn't turn off.
Right.
So it's an incredibly important thing to do. I want to pivot over to Drew for Carole. You got something on that real quick?
Yeah, I was just going to,
I do too.
What both of you said, and Jim knows this about me especially. I'm not like, I don't write every single day, but I do teach stand up. When we used to have classes, as you do too. And one of the things I've always said to my students was, you have to write every day, every day, every day. In my case, I'm just, my gas tank is empty right now. I don't feel the need to do that, but writing is important. And the thing that sucks right now is the other most important thing is, of course, getting on stage, and you can't do that now. So that's where, to me, the Zoom shows come in. For the younger people, because like I know for me, and I'll throw this out to the rest of the panel, is when I write something, I'm not even listening if the audience is laughing. I'm trying to get the timing down and getting the wording correct. Okay, so for young comics to go onto a Zoom mic, knowing full well you're not going to get that reaction that we're used to, that to me helps you become a better writer. So even though I'm personally not doing those shows, I would suggest to try to get whatever kind of stage time you can at this point, since stage time as we know it is no longer there.
All right, Lori, real quick, because I want to pivot.
Yep, real quick. When you're talking about writing every day, I think you are writing every day, and I want you to like give yourself a pat on the back because you're thinking. It's just a matter of what Jim is trying to tell you to do is to get it on paper so you can flush it out, so you can extrapolate on it, so you can expand upon it or pinpoint on something, and why you think it's funny. It's one of the greatest things that Jim has ever said. But being that we don't have that platform anymore, you still have to connect with people. And I've always been this person, but what I'm doing now, because I think people really need it, is when I am going out and running my essential errands that I need to do, is I am engaging people, whether it be with the essential workers, whether it be with the person in the aisle, whether it be whatever. I'm still connecting to people, and I'm still generating material based on those little personal connections. So there is ways for you to do it. You have to just see it as a way for you to create material.
I want to pivot over to Drew because we're talking about connecting with an audience, and full disclosure, like right at the start of this, I'm such a technology idiot. Drew's literally sending me private messages, do this now, do this now, do this now, and helping me out technology-wise. So you've embraced it, and not only embraced, you've kind of championed the new platform. You know, when we had our conversation on Thursday, we even spoke about, Google Meet, and you're going to give that a test run. So you tend to not only embrace it, but you tend to test it. What are the opportunities for comics? What do they need to know about the new technologies, and how can they use that to their advantage?
Sure. So by quick background to build off some of what's been said, part of the reason why I'm so passionate about sharing comedy out in a virtual way is, like, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, I'm an engineer by background. The best way I feel like I can give back is to help people laugh, because that's what I've been training to do. You know, that's the last 15 years, that's what I've been doing. And so part of the reason for doing it is just for my own sanity, but also to be that catharsis. As Deena has mentioned multiple times, comedy is one of the most searched for terms as of right now. So for our audiences, by putting virtual stuff out there, we can provide that background. And that's why what we did in April was a live virtual event every single day of the month, just to do that, and so that we can learn. I'm an engineer by background. We said we don't quite have the same stage that we had before, but, as Shakespeare said, all the world's a stage. So absolutely, that idea of writing is core, and then figuring out different ways to get it out there. A friend of mine, Sarah Cooper, is blowing up on TikTok. You've probably seen some of that. She's a comedian in the New York-based area.
She's great.
And she is
former
crushing
student
it.
of Jim Mendrinos.
Yeah, and she's crushing it because she's pivoted. She's changed her kind of style. So social media is absolutely a place that people can do it. Doing live Facebook lives, Instagram lives, those types of things work. And Zoom meetings. So of the ones that I like the most, Zoom meetings. Quick shout out for the people watching. If you are currently in gallery view and you're seeing a lot of non-video people and you just want to see just the panelists, if you click on any one of the non-videos, if you look up, move your mouse, you'll see 3 dots in the corner next to their video. If you click on those 3 dots and then click on hide non-video participants, what that will do is hide everyone that's not showing their video, in which case then you will just have us as a nice kind of Brady Bunch type of panel of just video. So you can do that. You can also then do things like, as a host, Jim could be spotlighting our videos if you wanted to, could be taking them away. To Carole's point, yeah, it is a little bit different doing a Zoom meeting, but there's some settings that you can change for audio so that you hear laughter more fully, namely turning off noise suppression. So what we're doing for a lot of our virtual shows is we're identifying people who are going to laugh, be an audience that comes in and laughs. We have them come in before the show, tell them how to change their settings, and then encourage them to keep their mics on for the entire show. So you do get that laughter. You still do get that feedback. And whether that's just a show for just that Zoom room, which is what we're doing mostly, because as comedians, a lot of us are realizing, hey, we may not want all of this to exist on social media forever because we're testing out material, right? We don't necessarily want the audience to see that, the COVID kind of related stuff that we're doing. So, we just keep it contained in Zoom. Don't stream it to Facebook Live. And then that way we control it, and that's that live experience. Whether it's our shows or other shows, we've done shows with 350 some odd people coming into a Zoom meeting, still seeing their videos. Ray Ellen is doing some really fun stuff with his shows where he is doing crowd work, where he will zoom in, he will spotlight an audience member's video and then talk to them. Hey, where are you coming in from? What's that in your background? It looks like this, or like, why is the light so dark, or whatever. So he's doing crowd work and unmuting them at the same time. I use a lot of the chat. So for example, I'm curious, just kind of in the chat for the people listening, share the number of years that you've been doing stand-up comedy, right? So you can do an informal poll, but just in the chat, go ahead and type in how many years you've been doing stand-up. And now we can start to get a sense from people. And that's not like rhetorical yet. That's like an actual thing for people to do, right? It's a way for us to gauge. So 5 in August from Chris. Deena said 2, 1.5 at like a year and a half, kind of in the middle. So far we're a little bit on the younger side. Joel says 5, right? These are ways that we can engage with the audience and still do crowd work. And to, some of what Leighann talked about, there's some silver lining to the technology piece. So when we're doing some of our writing workshops or our free improv drop-ins, we're getting people from, China and Australia and Germany and all across the US all in one call, right? All at one time. So it's now a more international type focus. So again, it's not perfect. It's not replicating things, but there are some stuff that you can do on a technology side. I saw in the chat one person asked the question of, again, what was the setting? So if you go next to your microphone down in Zoom, you'll see a little up arrow. If you click on that up arrow and then click on audio settings, there's one thing that you can do there is sometimes you can uncheck automatically adjust microphone volume. If your audio is always a little bit low, you can uncheck that and set that setting for yourself. But if you scroll down and click on the little white advanced button, then there you can actually disable suppress persistent background noise and suppress intermittent background noise. And by turning those two things off, Zoom thinks of laughter, especially coming from someone who's not talking, is intermittent background noise. And so you want to have all of your audience members turn that off so that when they do laugh, it actually comes through. That's also incredibly important if you want to do music. We've been doing some variety shows where we've had musicians come in with piano player and guitar and singing. You want to make sure that they turn those settings on or turn original sound on, and that allows you to hear both the music and the sound at the same time. So there's a bunch of geeky kind of technology type things that you can do to make for a better virtual experience. Does it completely replicate it? No, but it does create an experience that I think people are really kind of enjoying.
Now I want to go over to Al because we've had this conversation when I said, is Broadway going to start to produce virtual shows? And, you were toying with the idea as late as a couple of weeks ago. And I know that you're gearing to open up the club. And I saw all the pictures you put of the face shields on the ticket booth and what have you. Do you think that these Zoom shows and things of that nature are ultimately helpful to keep comedy alive during this time? Or do you think that it's kind of detrimental to what you're trying to do?
I kind of like Leann's view on it, that it's a place to continue to be creative and to write and to, work the muscles and do stand-up. I'm still not convinced completely that it's the way to go. I'll give you an example. Late night TV, The Tonight Show, Jimmy Kimmel, although I think Jimmy Kimmel does it the best of what I've seen so far. But I'm watching these shows, and it's like someone in their basement bullshitting, and it's not keeping my attention. I'm craving that audience laughter, and it's just not working for me. And I don't want to be a dinosaur. I don't want to be closed to new ideas. We've had the ability for many, many years to stream comedy shows out of a comedy club and take it wherever people want to go with a live audience. And the big problem with all of that, for those thinking about monetizing any of this, is there is so much content out there. Even at $5, you couldn't get people to buy the product online. So I'm grappling. We are going to do a Broadway Zoom show tomorrow night. I think it's very, some of these Zoom shows I've seen or tried to watch, in all fairness, I lasted a couple of minutes and then I just had to go. It was painful to watch. It's like, first of all, if you're going to do a Zoom show, do something with your background. I don't need to see your can of Lysol or your cat food back there. Do something with your background. Put a comedy club or something out there. So I'm very leery of it. I listen. If it's something that we find successful, we're promoting it. We're going to do it tomorrow night. We're going to try it. I don't have a big hope for comedy without an audience. It's very difficult, and we're working on some things that we're going to try to be socially distanced, but keep that audience more involved. And I think also that is going to depend. And I think this is where your MCs are now going to become extremely valuable in the show. They've always been valuable. And I know, Jim, you've done your fair share of MCs through the years, but this is where they're going to become valuable, because you're going to have to take someone in one far end of the room, another far end of the room, all the far ends of the room, and bring them into a show. And I'm starting to think that you might see something, if it's economically doable. Remember, anything you do in New York, you need permits and you need to file the permits. And I don't know how easily you can file permits in this era, because you can't find anybody to answer a phone or at a government office. But my feeling is, when we reopen, I think we should start to think about comedy in the round. Because right now, the way most of these comedy clubs are built, you're all the way in one part of the room and people are all the way spaced out. Now, if you have comedy in the round, you could still do your 6-foot social distancing, but now the comic is more centralized, and that's just one of the ideas I'm thinking about in terms of live comedy.
Yeah. And it just, I just wanted to build off of that, because I think, to Al's point, where you run into problems in a virtual show is when you try to replicate the in-person show as much as possible, right? Because exactly to Al's point, why would you join, or why would you pay $5, $10, $15, or $20 to watch a Zoom show when you can pay $20 and have Netflix for a month and watch, a show that has had hundreds of $1,000s kind of put into it with a live audience and all of that. And so the way to get around that is to start to take advantage of the virtual experience. One, you can have drop-ins from people. You can have if you have the connections and you know the people that are willing to do it, you can have drop-ins from some pretty big names on a show that maybe they wouldn't have done your show otherwise if you're a new comedian producing something. You can, again, the interaction piece, I think, is really, really important, because if you're going to do a show and have no type of, as an MC or otherwise, connect with the audience in any way, it's like, why did they join even live? But if you're doing things where you're interacting with people, where you're using something like an Ecamm Live or a BeLive.tv or StreamYard or something like that, where if someone posts a comment on Facebook, you can bring it into the stream and say, so-and-so said this. If you're not doing like that type of interaction where people experience that it is in fact a live show, then there isn't really a point for them to pay additional top dollar to get into it.
I wanted to bring this to Wilson because I know he has a comment, and then I also want to piggyback on it. Go ahead, Wilson.
No, just a quick comment. I saw the pictures of the plexiglass shield around the ticket booth in Al's club, and that's going to be real important. You want people to come back to your club. They have to think that you're taking their health and safety seriously. So that, now some of that may be mandated by law in the future, but that kind of approach, comedy is a joke, but we're still taking the health of our audience seriously. That's going to be critical to getting audiences to come back.
And I also wanted to ask you about this, Wilson, then I'll get to you next, Deena. I found on the Zoom shows that I've done, and I've been doing a ton of them of late, two things. One, the shows that charge a cover charge don't get an audience. Shows that say donate whatever you can get an audience. The other side that I'm seeing is, unlike traditional comedy clubs, I can't tell you how many people have been PayPaling me or Venmoing me tips. Audience members just going, great time, thanks for the laugh, here's some money, unsolicited, because I'm never saying, hey, tip me. So they're not only seeing me, but finding me and then doing it. Is there a psychology behind that?
Well, I think that's a response to the fact that we all feel like we're going through this crisis together. So people want to help. But outside of a crisis context, generally speaking, if people have to pay, they perceive it as having more value, and they kind of dismiss things that are free as they think, well, that's worthless. Why would I do this thing that's not free? So once the crisis passes, I think a cover charge will be more likely to draw an audience than a free show.
All right. Deena, you had something you wanted to follow up?
Yeah, quickly, the themes that I'm hearing, and that I also believe in, adapting. So adapting physically, and I say this for my benefit as well as for everybody else. I had a horrific time adapting at the beginning. I'm an extreme extrovert. I'm a networking coach. I'm single. I live alone. All of my business, my corporate, was in person. I facilitate groups in person. And it took me a while to get off the couch and out of bed and figure it out. And I kicked myself in the ass and just started to learn from other people and figure it out on my own. Adapting content. And that's something like, Carole, you are being creative. You've adapted what you do to a different platform.
Thank you.
So adapting through video content, through written content, through and technology, to Drew's point. And here's also where free exposure versus paid performance. And as a business person, like, yeah, marketing and PR, that's kind of the free aspect, but we need to charge for our services, whatever we do in life, producing, directing, creating, performing. So I would say looking at other ways to promote ourselves. Like, Carole, I'd love to be a guest on your show. I'd love to have you as a guest on my show. I can recommend you to the half a dozen to a dozen shows that I've been on in the past 6 weeks, and workshops and speaking gigs and coming together like that. To me, it really is about adapting to whatever and being open to adapting.
Well, can I just hop on there about adapting, and a lot of the people on this know me very well, and they know I'm not one to be proud of myself. But when the reason Funny Women became what it became is that when I, in my late 50s, realized that I had nothing to offer to comedy clubs anymore. And I was a major headliner. I was on the road 3 weeks every month. And I went to Vegas and I lived there. I was, and then I came back and it was like, you're not considered a national headliner anymore. And I was like, huh? I mean, I could not understand that. So I had to reinvent myself, is when Jim introduced me. I had to reinvent myself. And that's why I came up with the idea of the show, which ends up, becoming a huge hit, So I think we're all in agreement. This is now, for me, I just got sideswiped by this. So, I will come back, and I'll come back stronger. Because my attitude is, fuck this. I already adapted to my age. Do I have to adapt to a fucking pandemic now? Jesus Christ. So
too much.
It is too much.
It is.
But that's the important thing for the people who are watching, and the younger comics. Do we all wish that we could go back and do open mics and get our stuff and do what we were taught, and pass on to the younger people about getting on stage and every single goddamn night and doing all those shows? We can't do that anymore. So we do have to adapt. So, that's I think the key thing for all of this is we're all trying. Club owners and corporate people and stand-up, we're all trying to figure out what's the next step for our business. And I think we're all here talking about it. I mean, how many club owners are probably there are probably going to be a lot of club owners that are just not reopening.
Yeah.
I think Punchline is opening up in Atlanta any day now. And, I'll be curious to see, Al, you should take I'm sure, I don't know if I'm sure Chris DePetta, but I mean, you should keep a look on and see what they're doing, how they're keeping their club, alive.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry to.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, right now, I basically had two major jobs. One is making sure I'm on top of any of and all of the funding out there that's available, whether they're grants or low-cost loans or whatever the options are, and trying to figure out which of any of those work for me. I've been in, negotiations with landlords trying to figure this whole thing out for the short term and the long term, and that's, number two. And number three, trying to figure out how we're going to be opening safely when that day comes.
Right.
And safely, not only for the comedians and customers. Now, where in the past we used to market, hey, come on down, great comics at great prices. Now it's going to be, come on down, 6 feet social distancing, plexiglass all over. URL stations every 3 feet. I mean, you know, it's
Yep.
gonna be.
Oh,
You have to.
you should sell them face masks with the logo of your club.
Oh, that's a great idea.
People are
That's-
doing
Yeah,
branding.
we've looked at that, but they're not cheap. But yeah, that might be enough instead of.
So you mark it up double. Al Martin, come on, man.
I can hook you up with the Broadway community that's producing masks for the hospitals.
There
So
you
it's
go.
keeping it in the family.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you know, these are the things that are occupying my time, and it's on top of all of that occupying of time. I have no idea when we're going to reopen
Right.
and at what capacity. So all of it is a real challenge right now. Probably the biggest I've had.
Yeah.
Let me, and I know Leighann wants to make a moment, but I want to double off of something that Carole said, because she talked about having to reinvent herself. And when I look around the panel, I know how long me and Carole have been doing it. The earth cooled, and Carole brought me up on stage. That's how long she and I have been doing it. You know, Al's not far behind us. Leann's got a couple of decades in this. Lori's had a couple of decades in this. And what all of us can speak to anybody that's 5 years or younger is, I don't care how good you are. I don't care how smart you are. I don't care how wonderfully talented you are. I don't care if you're the flavor of the month right now. You will have to invent yourself over and over and over again for the entirety of your career. You know, every couple of years, what you were doing doesn't work, and you need to find a way to make something new happen. And it's not survival. That's the creativity that we're told to bring. That's part of what we embrace as artists. Let me get to Leighann, then I'll follow it up with Lori. Go ahead, Leighann.
Yeah, no, I just want to, Al mentioned something, you know, about, you know, people who are doing Zoom shows and, you know, have a thought to your background. I think the first show, I started doing my own shows. I started doing my working from home comedy club, which was just me being insane and wanting to do something. But I remember the day I did it, I drove out to Michael's, I bought a red cloth, I taped it up, and people couldn't see the tape. There was duct tape back there. Now it's a little bit more professional. I actually had a rig, you know, I set up a tablecloth that I safety pinned. Like, I treated it like a real show. I could put up lighting, you know, I thought about my background. And I think that translates. The audience sees like, oh, is she in a club? Like, what did she just do? And it made me feel good. It makes me feel great standing in front of that red background. Like I came to play. I came to do this, you know. And it again, it's the same when you do in a club. When you set the scene, when the candles are on the table, when the light is the right lighting, when music is playing, you know, you still have to train your audience, whether it's, you know, in a real space or virtual. And that, so yeah, I just want to say, yeah, Al, that's me. You know, and I think it's important. It trains the eye. I don't want people looking at anything else but me.
Let me go down to Lori, and then I saw you, Wilson, too. So we'll go over to Wilson after. Go ahead, Lori.
Well, you know, I think that falls under the blanket of professionalism. Leighann, you're a professionalism. So you're a professional. So you're thinking about those things. And, you know, you're talking about Jim said the flavor of the month or what have you. You could have all of those things, but you're looking as a marathon and not a sprint. So, you know, yes, we need to evolve. You need to show that there's care, concern, respect. When we were going to the clubs, you had to show respect to the club when you came in. You don't come in and be nasty, you don't disregard, you know, it's like showing respect for the people that are within that building and for the art form itself, for the people that work there, for the audience, for your other comedians. There's so much that's encompassed under that umbrella of professionalism. And you know, the thing about this pandemic is we're all in a process of learning and growing and doing it together and finding our path through. And, you know, but we have to do it within the confines of what's at hand. So yes, like you said, Leighann, it's creating that thing, because if you look behind the stage, there's not a lot happening behind a stage. It's kind of a blank slate. So all of the focus is on the comic. I don't have all of this craziness and cacophony of things behind you. You have that focus, so it's strictly on the performer. But you have to evolve with what the times are presenting to you.
Right, and hold on, because I need to get to Wilson, then I'll get to Carole. But before I pivot up to Wilson, but for new comics, do not use your lack of having a proper background prevent you from getting your ass in a Zoom box.
Oh gosh,
Right.
no.
Better to
Yeah,
have
Yeah.
better
And
to have
Go
your
speed
laundry
racer,
behind
go.
you. You
and
know,
stand up.
you gotta just do this because if
Mhm.
not now, when? What were you gonna say, Wilson?
No, sorry, I didn't have anything to say. I was just nodding my head very
Ah.
vigorously.
Okay, so over to Carol.
Well, I just want to, if you can look to the right of my shoulder, you can see all
Yes.
my wipes that I have been able to, that I am selling now on eBay for $100 a box. So anybody
Perfect.
wants them.
That's a bargain, everybody.
I just want to bring, this is my son that no longer is living with us, but you'd never know that because this
Wow.
is all of his shit. But I do want to just talk about professionalism and stuff. And I figured at some point we were going to get to this. But I can tell you, when we're talking about TV and trying to sell something to a network, right now, this is all they have is us in a box. So, you know, if you're, you have to give the illusion that you know what the fuck you're doing. And you have to look like you're a professional, because they want, there's going to be, networks are looking right now to do virtual television shows. That's the next thing that's going to happen, because Hollywood isn't, just so everyone is, you know, I know that the networks all went, hey, we renewed our shows, and hey, they're not even getting close to opening up the studios, because you know, and when I was talking about with Broadway and the crew and people, you know, when you're talking about a TV show, you're not just talking about the fact that you have a studio audience, which is about 100 people. You've got the entire crew, the stage managers, the cameramen. You have to make sure that everyone is safe. So nobody's going back to anything. So the point I'm trying to say is, if you have an idea for a show and you're doing it on Zoom, make sure it looks professional, because you don't know who is watching that going, hey, that's a great idea. Let's see if we can sell it.
I can actually piggyback that, because New Media Comedy, which is the company I run, just on a one-off to get my people involved, we put together a live stream on YouTube this past Friday, which was not necessarily the news. Kind of me and Amanda as news anchors, and then we had different people record different segments. Wilson recorded a mental health segment, and it's all comedy parody based off of COVID. And we put it up, and at 40 minutes, you know, news anchors throwing to different field reporters. The simplest thing you can do, everything recorded with iPhones. We've already had 2 networks reach out and say, how'd you do that?
Wow.
Right.
What are you doing? And how can we make this happen on a more regular basis?
Right.
Now, the difference, and Carol will tell you this too, having sold a show, the difference between that first initial phone call and having somebody write a check, that's forever. But to get that first initial phone call is everything, because you don't go anywhere unless you get that initial phone call.
Well, I can also tell you this, and this goes back to how long I've been in this business, but I remember I had written a TV sitcom years ago with a good friend of mine, Stephen Cruiser, who you know, it was based on our relationship. We're very, very close, but he's a conservative and I'm a liberal. So it was based on that relationship. And I remember talking to the head of, I don't know, she's gone through all these different, I think she was the head of Fox Comedy at that point. And she loved the script, but 2 things she said to me. She goes, Carol, it's a great script. Nobody will like it because it's too smart. And I said, okay. I said, well, and she said, and I got to tell you, this was back 20 years ago. She goes, you know where we're finding new comics? We're finding new comics at the open mics. Like, we're going out and they're just showing up at open mic clubs to see the new talent. So the point I'm bringing this up is, you don't know who is watching if it's a Facebook live stream, or if it's a YouTube live, or however you have no idea who is watching, who is going to say, hey, like Jim said, I like it, let's talk. Now, to go from A to money, there'll be another pandemic when that happens.
Al, what do you want to say?
Yeah, no, I can attest exactly to what Carol is saying, because I remember years ago working my own open mic at the original New York Comedy Club on before 24th, on 2nd and 48th. And we had multiple managers coming, not to the shows, but to the open mic. I can remember Jeff Sussman. I could remember Rose Garden. You know, I mean, they were coming to the open mic to watch the talent. And they would always call me back. Barry Katz would call me, even though at the time he had Boston. He would say to me, Al, who's anybody interesting coming up the ranks? Anybody that looks good, you know, anybody worth coming down to see? So yes, it was at the open mic level that a lot of that was happening.
Yeah. So you have to, you know, you have to just think that people are watching. I mean, I'm always surprised at who's watching. You know, I'm always like, oh, okay, that didn't know that person. Like sometimes when you go through Facebook, you'll think nobody's watching. Like when you post something, and then all of a sudden somebody, you go, where the hell did they come from? And it ends up being like an industry person. You're like, are they watching everything I do and just not commenting except for this? So you have to act like you're a professional. Like I said, all of my lovely wipes are right there for everyone to see. You do.
I get inboxed all the time.
Yeah.
On Twitter, on IG, on Facebook. Oh, Leighann, I saw your such and such. Can you do such and such?
Right. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, back in the day, to be seen, you were sitting on a bar stool, you were club hopping.
Yeah.
Now it's social media. What are you posting, and are you posting consistently?
Yep.
And showing up. Are you showing up? Are you posting like once a month, you know, or once a week? And then are you posting quality?
Listen to this woman. She is the social media queen. I mean,
I am not.
Yeah,
I am not.
Well, to me you are, because I literally sometimes I'm laying in bed going, God damn it, I forgot to do something on Instagram, and I wake the fuck up because of you.
Drew, you had a point you want to make?
Yeah, so I mean, to build off of Carole's point, for sure. I mean, there's a lot of things that you can do production-wise. I've booked multiple, you know, I've been working with some corporate to do shows because I saw the virtual shows that we were running. We've done virtual workshops now because I saw the improv things that we're running. So putting content out there is a great way. In the speaking industry, which I'm more than happy to talk about a little bit later as a way to monetize certain things, but you speak to get more speaking traditionally. But to build off of the technology piece, Ecamm Live is traditionally what I use for a lot of things. And with that, I can then pretty easily add now, you know, this watermark in my corner. So I can add some visualization to it. If I wanted to, I could be like, I wish we were here, right? Don't we all wish we were here at the Broadway Comedy Club a little bit right now?
Yes, I do.
So we can transition pretty quickly, easily into some of these things with a little bit of technology. And so I've been answering some questions in the chat. More than happy to continue to do that. I also posted this link. I'll repost it. If you're wondering about the technology side of a webcam for HD or Ecamm Live or Be Live or these other things that I've talked about, it's a post written up there. But to Leann's point, there's a great democratization happening in terms of getting your content out to an audience. And that's something of value that I see, at least talking with some club owners, are like, hey, what's your social media following? Like, can you bring an audience? And if you can build your audience now, then when there is a live in-person thing and you can kind of, you know, if you're going to a new city, that sometimes worked for me of like, hey, you don't know who I am. I don't have TV credits, but I can be sure to bring X number of people to your club. Is that something that you're interested in? And it's starting to open a little bit more doors. So that is something that you can start to build a little bit right now.
Drew, I'm going to reach out to you personally because I have some questions about what I'm doing for my for the early bird special. So because we're still trying to figure out. Literally, we have my husband standing out of frame doing the intro, and then as he leaves, you can see him leaving. So it's not. It's like to figure.
We can talk about that because there's also advanced features.
Yeah.
So a lot, if you've ever seen any of the kind of like Comic-Con or Wizarding World or those types of things, and really actually what they're doing on ESPN and ABC is they have a virtual producer, which you could have a Zoom in. If we had someone sitting in on a different side with OBS or Wirecast as software options, they could move all of our images around. They could put overlays. They could put our title down at the bottom. They could add a little countdown timer if we wanted to be like we're on Pardon the Interruption or whatever. There's a lot that can be done with virtual production to elevate, you know, the overall experience that people are seeing. And to Al's point, absolutely, it's weird because the late night TV show, they're just kind of like, here's kind of the best we can do. There's a lot of people, YouTubers, etc., that are doing way higher quality production
Yeah.
stuff than some of these other groups, and how can you learn from them?
Actually, I can speak to that exact thing. They were given the edict to dumb down the production because they didn't want anyone thinking that camera crews were sent to people's homes. So, particularly John Oliver's tonight, with what he has, because he's performing in front of a white wall, he could have graphics flying in and zooming in at the speed of light if he wanted to, because he records on a Wednesday. It's uploaded via the internet, and they add all the graphics in for Saturday. They were told to dumb it down. The network specifically want to give the late night host the common man feel. So that's intentional. And which is why I think you're seeing a whole lot of virtual video that's running circles around what the late night shows are doing. I did want to talk a little bit about, because we're all mired in this right now. We're all using what we can, and we're all trying to figure this out together. But one of the things that we're getting a sense of is the sense of community. And comedy's been very much a community for my whole life. I mean, me as a stand-up, I'm standing on the shoulders of the people that taught me. I'm standing on the shoulders of the Dennis Wolfbergs and the Sam Kennisons and the Bill Hickses, who sat me down and went, all right, here's how to write a joke. Or Barry Barry, who literally took me to a diner and went, all right, you're going to learn how to write today. That's how I started. And I've always reached back and tried to help people. I know, Al, you've employed comics when they haven't had, jobs or money to eat. You've just given them jobs, and I've seen you give jobs when there weren't jobs to give. And the community is very much about helping each other out. What technology-wise can we do to help out the people that don't know? I know, Drew, you have that sheet that you've been sending to everyone. You sent it over here as well. But what can we do as a community to better help the people that need the help right now? Anyone want to jump in on that one?
Are you talking about helping comics who are not working?
Not just not working, because there's funds set up. Ray Allen has his fund set up for that. There's a couple of other funds that have started on the West Coast. So comedy's trying to take care financially of its community. But for instance, I started the festival because I kept getting email after email from young comics going, I finally found the one thing I love doing, and now it's never coming back. So I started the festival to give them a little bit of hope. And, I know that Drew's been sharing everything he can to help people make their shows better. What do you think the things that comics need to know to get through the remainder of this crisis? All right. Anybody?
I think it's what we've all said: adapt. Comedy is not just getting on. Well, stand-up comedy is, but it's not just. And I say this to my former students: it's not just being a stand-up comedian. It's being a writer. It's being a producer. I mean, people think, you're a comedian. You just get on stage and tell jokes. Well, you know what? Maybe there's a day that I don't feel good, or like Jim said, you went on stage. You wrote after deaths. You get on stage and you do what you have to do. And even when you're on stage, I know we've all had this experience where you're on the stage and your mind is just like, you're looking at the guy in the back. You're going, is that woman going to do? You're thinking 100 ways, besides the fact that you're actually telling jokes. So there's so much in comedy that isn't being live and stand up. The fact that I have to say about our community, as much as I have not done the Zoom shows, we pretty much got our shit together pretty fast, and the comedy community went, we're doing Zoom shows because we have to get on stage.
We so sure did.
We're only talking the pandemic. It's been 2 months, and within 2 weeks, people were on stage doing comedy. Mm-hmm. So there's other ways to do this. Leighann writes books, and Deena, I'm assuming that you still do coaching, and we all do
comedy.
Yeah. So we all have our way. Like very sadly, I started to write a book when Leighann left 8 years ago. And I finished it because I was going to this wonderful place that I go called the Artist Co-op, which is basically a WeWork for artists. But it's closed right now. So the book just went away. But I know that that's another way to connect with audiences about what I do. It's writing, it's coaching, maybe write a movie, or maybe write a sitcom, maybe do a sketch show. Do like Leighann said about, we all have our phones now. We can all do whatever we want. It doesn't mean it's going to go viral, but it at least makes us feel like we're doing something.
Yeah, let me get to Lori, then Leighann. Lori, go ahead.
I mean, it falls under, it's just a new way of networking. So, when things were quote unquote normal, people were going out, you're going and hanging out in the club, you're connecting to other comedians. Yep. So now it's still finding a way that you can still connect to people. And I just want to dip back a little bit when you were talking about, you never, whoever's in the audience, and Al was saying how, there used to be people that would come to the open mics. Your first impression leaves a lasting impression, and there are people always listening. I could speak for myself of, no matter if I was running a new talent show or running a mic or doing whatever I was doing, I was always listening. I was, and I always took things into consideration, and I was always about providing opportunity for somebody else, and mentioning someone's name of this is someone to look out for or whatever. So you always want to bring your A game wherever you are, to whatever platform is available to you. And you still have the same thing that you do when you go into a comedy club. You still have to have that same mindset of coming into a Zoom show, being a part of a Zoom show. Zoom shows now, and especially when they're free, if you see that one's coming up, even just be a participant, even so you can engage in the chat, so you can get with the person who's producing it. There's still all of these avenues that you have to take advantage of from where we are. And so, no, you're not going out from spot to spot. You're not jumping from mic to mic, but from the comfort of your own home, regardless of what's behind you, you still have the opportunity to go and be and connect. And it's very important for us to do that now. And maybe that's a gift of right now, that we don't have to leave our home, and we can still make these impactful relationships with people that are maybe more advanced than us, that, that do have more experience behind, that have jumped on, like you said, within 2 weeks, people are doing Zoom shows. They're finding ways, they're finding opportunities. We need to connect with those people. And maybe you wouldn't have connected with them if it wasn't for the pandemic. So that's like, you have to find the glimmers, and you have to find the bright spots within a shitty situation. And this is shitty. This is bad for everybody. We're all at a loss, but where is the bright spot? And, if you take that just for 5 minutes out of your day, we could think about all the bad stuff throughout the day for all of those hours and minutes, but for 5 minutes and be like, okay, what did this give me? And how can I take advantage of it? And how can I grow and become better within the art form that fills my soul? And so you could do that again from the comfort of your own home. I'll shut up now.
Leighann, what'd you have to say?
Lori, I think that's a beautiful idea. I love that. If you're not on the show, what's to stop you from just popping in and supporting and being in the audience? I think that's a wonderful idea, especially if you're your own bartender. So, just mix your drinks and show up. But I was going to say, particularly to Jim's question, how to help younger comics. I remember when I started, and I think that the advice still holds, and it's actually quite exploded. If you can't find a stage to get on, you make a stage.
Right.
You produce your own shows. These young comics don't even need to hear this part, because they're doing that. They enter without jokes and producing shows. But you can take that idea and expand out on it. One of my favorite things to do before the pandemic, I think it's Meetup. We all over the city had something called Shut Up and Write. Where you show up, there's strangers, but everybody's there to write. It's like, hello, and you shut up and you write for an hour and a half. What's to stop us from doing our own virtual writer's room, where because the idea, okay, some people need that discipline. Okay, 2:00 on Tuesday, we're all going to show up in this square. Hey, everybody, and you start writing. You're working on whatever you want to work on, and at the end of that hour, you don't necessarily have to come together and talk about what you're doing, but that's one way of running the room. The other way is to actually have a writer's group via Zoom. What are you guys working on? What do you want to talk about? Help me with this joke. We can't get together in diners. We can get together here, if the group thing is your thing.
Yeah. Al, you had something you wanted to add?
Yeah. I love that idea. I think it's a really good idea. I think, using Zoom in those kind of ways are terrific.
Yeah.
The only problem I've seen with Zoom, and the forerunner before that was sort of like streaming shows from comedy clubs on a pay-per-view basis. That was the big thing a few years ago, the attempt to do that. I still haven't seen, and we even discussed it here, how there's a reluctance. You've noticed it, Jim, in the shows you've done, for people to pay for the product. And if people aren't necessarily paying for the product, how do we all monetize this in a way to make it? It's a great hobby, but how do we make a living?
Right.
And that's going to be the trick. And that's why I hope we get back to normal, because as much as I've been trying to bang my head on this, and I love Carole's idea of saying, hey, it might not be stand-up today that you're making your money on. It might be, finding other ways of creativity, whether it's a book or whether it's a show where you're, actually talking about something else that's a specialty of yours, or even a class. I think Zoom is great for teaching a class. The problem is nobody has the money to pay for it right now. So monetizing this thing is really the trouble, and one more step for stand-up, not only monetizing, but getting that audience feedback, although Drew seems to have some pretty good ideas how to enjoy a little feedback from it. But monetizing this is to me, the issue in the whole thing.
Yeah, that's huge.
Go ahead, Drew.
Yeah, well, and certainly for comedians, I think there's probably some easier ways to monetize some ideas than potentially an entire club. To Al's point, because what's happening is we know that stand-up live in person is the best way to experience it. And so people are going to pay a premium to do that, in the sense of a premium of a higher ticket, but also the premium of showering, getting dressed, going to like an actual place, hiring a babysitter if they need to, etc. To now replicate that again, how are you doing something that is going to make someone not pay for, or who has already paid for Netflix and HBO and Hulu and all that kind of stuff, to also do a virtual show? That's a little bit more challenging. For sure. I think for comedians, you are starting to see people who are paying a little bit, not a ton, but for workshops, for education. And this was part of my pivot years ago when I was looking. Short background is I have a degree in computer science and engineering, so I love the technology piece. I was working as a project manager at Procter & Gamble. And so when I was looking to leave P&G, exploring just straight stand-up comedy, it was like, I don't know if I want to be in a new town every single weekend. I don't know if I want to travel. I don't really drink all that much. I don't know if like that's for me. But there's a speaking world where I can do a little bit of stand-up and then add a message to it. And now my gigs are at 9 a.m. on Wednesday as opposed to Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And what I realized then also is, at least in the corporate market, if you can be clean and you add a message, you go from corporate entertainer to corporate speaker, and the dollar amount is very different. And certainly right now we're producing some comedy shows for corporate groups. So if you're as a comedian, you want to be booked on those types of shows, to Deena's point earlier, you have to be clean. Some comedians don't want to do that, or some people have an amazing hour and a half, and then as soon as they have to be corporate clean, they have about 3.5 minutes. And so part of that is, what type of material are you writing for it? And then again, if you add that additional message piece, that's when it goes from, now you're looking at different markets and companies, not all of them, because a lot of them are restricting budgets, but some of them are now realizing, we need education. We need to improve morale. We need communication skills, something that comedians are very good at. Who can we hire to bring in? Or for brands, some of you may know about comedywire.com as a way to outsource creating lines. And so comedians can sign up, they can write for it. And then if someone comes in and says, hey, we need comedy ideas about deodorant, and people can kind of share their ideas. And then if they select your ideas, you get paid for them. So it's like, different ways to monetize this skill set of communication skills, public speaking skills, communicating in a way that people actually listen. There's multiple ways to kind of monetize that, in addition to the books, podcasts, videos, etc., the things that have been talked about. Unfortunately, I know a lot less about the club side of things, which is probably just helping to be a producer of some of those ideas.
So,
Yep, and
can I
I'm going to go to Deena in 2 seconds. One thing I want to clarify, because there's a lot of newer comics, when Drew's talking about, having a clean set, it also means having the video that someone can show to a corporate buyer that shows you being clean. It's not enough to say you're clean. You need the video to back it up. And number two, there are workshops happening. I know I teach a stand-up comedy workshop online, and I'm getting more emails saying, how do I get in? So it is growing, and we are starting to see virtual dollars move. Deena, you had something, and then I want
Yeah,
to pivot over to Wilson.
to add to what you, Andrew, said. So I did a workshop last week for freelance art directors in the entertainment industry on branding and networking. And one of the things we talked about is side hustle. How can you use your current professional skills as a comic, as a creator? Also, what business skills do you have? So Leighann, you're one of the most organized comic in terms of your content, right?
Yes, she is.
Yes.
Mhm.
And Jim has presented you, and this is a skill set, your social media skills. Those translate to other industries. So I produced my first online show with Jim because we met, again, like those happenstances. You never know how the next person you meet can change your life. That's been my own personal quote for years with my brand. And I produced a show. Now, I have been producing shows of one kind or another for 20, 30 years. I have been a networker, bringing people together. We brought Drew on, Jim brought Leighann and Lori on. We found our 3 charities, which included Ray and 2 charities that I was connected with. So looking at your networks within and beyond the comedy network, looking at your professional skills, whether it's organizing or people or technology, and looking at your creative skills, bringing that together in different ways. And so whatever you can teach. Like, I'm going to run a series of workshops, and Jim, I'd love to obviously do this with you and Leighann, on what I know, branding, social media, networking. We all have different skill sets we can offer to each other. So I think that the coming together and sharing ideas rather than trying to do it ourselves will be the way to adapt and move forward now and beyond.
Yep. Now, I wanted to pivot over to Wilson for a second because I don't want to shortchange this part of our discussion. Carole's talked about not being ready yet to join in on Zoom shows. Carole basically had to prevent me from eating a bullet when this first happened.
I've done that for years. Every
Yeah.
fucking few years, I have to fucking bring him down.
In about
Few
6
years, every couple of days. What are you saying?
in a couple of different continents. There's a whole lot of external pressures that are hitting us, and I wanted to at least take a few minutes to talk about the mental health aspects, because comics, if you're not healthy, if you're not mentally stable, you've got nothing. You have nothing if you're not actually capable of being in a room. So Wilson was kind enough to put together a short list of resources that you guys can email me about, and I will gladly send it to you. But I wanted you to talk about the mental health aspects. What are some of the stresses that people are going through now, and what are some of the things they can do to kind of relieve the stresses short term until they find the right places to find help?
Well, I mean, I think you just have to follow the news to know mostly what's going on. This is a collective trauma compounded by things like isolation, unemployment, the stress of the uncertainty of, how you're going to pay your bills, but also, are you and your friends and family going to be healthy? And it's already having a big impact. And I think that the totality of the psychological damage we can't even assess for another few months, or even until after the pandemic, blows over, which obviously we all hope it does. And because by that time, several months from now, people will have been dealing with a chronic stress. So, like you said, it's important to take care of your mental health. I think down the line, some of the best therapy will be having steady work and a reliable income. But in addition to that, taking care of yourself now, I mean, how to do that depends on the problem you're dealing with. So dealing with anxiety is a little bit different than dealing with depression, which is a little bit different than dealing with substance abuse. You know, one thing that works for all those, at least a little bit, is feeling connected to other people. So, and all of you have been talking about the sense of community among comics. I think that's really important for people who are in comedy, but also to stay connected to their family and friends, however you do that, you know, whether it's a phone call or a Zoom happy hour or whatever, which, you know, people are doing. So I did put together a list. You know, what I'm thinking is what's going to happen 6 to 8 months from now with people who are depressed and anxious and dealing with all sorts of trouble, but they also don't have money to pay for therapy. So the list I put together was resources in New York City that are low cost or reduced fee or you know, more affordable options, both for therapy, you know, couples therapy, group therapy, individual therapy, medication, if that's needed. And people can reach out to me directly if they're not in New York City or they have some other more, you know, specialized question that can't be dealt with in a 2-minute, you know, comment from me.
One of the things I do want to talk about, because we all do have a sense of community, I can't tell you how many 2 a.m. phone calls I've had over the past 2 months of somebody going, I'm on the edge, you know, a couple of times, like, you're the last person who's going to hear my voice. Those kind of, it's not realistic. They're not really going to kill themselves, but they're in need.
Mm-hmm.
What do we do at those moments when we get those calls? How can we best help the person we're talking to? Is it just simply listen? Do we try and problem solve? What are the steps that you think we go through?
I mean, definitely listen, be supportive, be validating. Then, you know, I think the best thing to do is to say, how can I help you? Some people just want to vent. They don't want someone to come in and start problem solving right away. They just need to get it all out and then, you know, process it a bit. So I think being a good listener, validating, offering to problem solve if that's what they want, directing them to resources if you feel like they're talking to you about things that that are you know, too scary and challenging and that might require a mental health professional. And on the list I put together, I also put down the numbers of some hotlines, like a suicide hotline, but you know, there are other levels of importance. So there are, you know, 24-hour counseling lines that are available. It's so they're not quite as urgent. They're not directed for someone who's in a suicidal crisis, but someone who's still very much in need.
Okay, so one of the biggest takeaways that I'm getting with this is that while comics all have different types of problems, the sense of community seems to be the strongest thing that we can do to really help each other. And we've put this together as a sense of community. The Zoom shows in and of themselves are a sense of community, but eventually we're all going to go back. And so the last question I have for you, and this is going to lead us to what I want the panel to talk about on our way out. And by the way, if anybody does have any questions, you can put them in the chat and I'll see if we have time to add them to this conversation. What do we need to prep ourselves from the couple of months, 2, 3, 4, 6, depending on what it's going to be by the end of this, of isolation we had, to getting back into the real world without feeling overwhelmed, without feeling like we're going to go crazy?
Well, I you know, it takes me back to what Carole was talking about earlier. I think there's going to be another sense of, ugh, not again. You know, I was just getting used to doing everything online, and now I have to return to.
And I will be bitching. Do not worry.
Oh, I know you will.
So again, I think I don't you know, I don't know exactly, other than it's going to be a new type of stress that's going to take adaptability and adjustment and when that's going to be another time when people are going to need to lean on their social supports a little bit. It's going to be a time when it's important for people to not keep to themselves and isolate, but to start reconnecting with the real world, doing the things that are within their control, and starting to outline, sketch some outline for how to move forward into a future that's uncertain. And the problem with uncertainty is anxiety loves uncertainty, as we talked about the other night, and we tend to fill in the blank with catastrophic scenarios. So it's good to do, there's worrying, and then there's advanced problem solving, and it's important to try to, if you're a worrier, to try to spin that a little bit into actual anticipatory problem solving, rather than just sort of spinning your wheels. And again, I think, having a good trusted friend is really important, having a community, and maybe also, a good therapist.
Wonderful. So, guys, if you look in the comment section, I know Drew is working on getting everyone the PDF that Wilson put together. That, like I told you, he's pretty much my go-to guy for everything online, because I cannot figure out how to put a PDF there. Go ahead, Leighann.
I just wanted to add, I am not a professional, but just adding to what Wilson has said, I think it's important, as we're going through this and then going forward, to honestly cut yourself some slack.
Mm-hmm.
This is our first pandemic. I don't think anybody here is old enough to remember the 1918.
Carole.
Okay, maybe Carole. Carole escaped unscathed and was bitching the entire time. But yeah, everybody,
So
first
true.
Pandemic. We didn't learn about any of this and how to deal. And I think most of us sometimes we're still trying to run at full speed, and this is not a run at full speed situation, and you give yourself a little compassion and trust. I mean, you guys think I'm super productive on the internet. Trust and believe. And Jim knows there are days I can't get off my couch, or I get up, I feed my cat, I go back to bed, and he comes in and goes, "Oh, this is what we're doing? Okay." And I know that's what I need, and I let myself do that. Know when you need to unplug. I don't need to watch CNN all day. I really don't.
You know what I did, in keeping with what you're saying. It's a minor thing, but like my biggest thing is that I wake up because I'm old. I pee in the middle of the night, and then I check my phone, and then I go on Twitter, and then I go down that wormhole. You know what I did? I blocked the Voldemort. I blocked anybody only because I don't follow him, but there are people who are my friends who are replying to him or are making a. And I went, you know what? I don't want to do that anymore. I'm every day I wake up going, what is going to happen today? Like where, we were supposed to have a tour off the special that started in October. Well, that's all been moved to 2021, and we don't even know if it's going to happen then. So it's like, I don't want to think about politics anymore. I don't want to. One of the greatest things that, and Leighann and Regina DeChico and I had a little Zoom thing where we had a little happy hour. It was the most. I walked out and my husband was like, "Wow, I haven't seen you smile in weeks." I said, it filled my soul. So to tag on what everyone's saying, do what you can to do these type of things, like meet with people, talk to people, even if it's for 20 minutes, man, it means the world because it changed. Because that's the thing I think I miss the most is what we're doing now in the clubs. Like when I would go to West Side and I'd see Lori and she'd be running around screaming, but we took 2-3 minutes to go, hey, what's up? How you doing? So when I would see Al in the club, we would talk. How's everything going? How's your family? How's your, we would see each other. We connect. So to be able to do this like this, it's life-saving. And for everyone watching, make sure you do that, man, because it's not looking good.
Yeah, let me jump in and then I'm going to swing over to Lori. The other note I wanted to add to this, and I know people like me and Al have the hardest time with this, now that we've moved work into our homes, as opposed to me going down to the office to produce, now I'm producing from my home. It's incredibly difficult for me not to work a 20-hour day. I mean, there was a moment where Jesse literally, said to me as I'm walking by to grab another soda, you don't leave that room unless you're getting a soda. And I'm like, okay, now I know what I need to do.
Right.
You have to really add life into what you're doing.
Mhm.
Lori, you had something, and then I'll get to Drew.
Well, I just guess these Zoom shows and everything and us connecting within our community is essential for us right now. But this is something that I've always done. And one of my favorite songs is called Limelight. And all the world's indeed a stage and we're merely players. No matter where I go, that's my stage. I'm still, and I feel like I'm doing it now. I'm being more engaging because I feel like, I don't know what people are doing in their homes. I don't know if they're watching comedy. I don't know what they're doing, but I feel that incessant need to always have that audience. And even if it's just a one-on-one, and I'm constantly engaging people anytime that I'm going out, no matter where I am, I'm connecting to somebody because I have to fulfill that need within myself. And like that is how I'm able to cope. Besides this, I still have that incessant need as a performer, as an artist. And, I love talking to, one of my favorite things to do is host, because I love that engagement with the audience. And I love being that through line, and I'm still working that muscle because we are going to come back. And I want to be able to come back stronger. And I want to be able to know that I connected with people through this. And it's just doing those little, because I don't know maybe I gave them a laugh, I gave them a smile that they're able to take with them and pay it forward. So it's those little tiny things. It's like I said, it's finding those bright spots and those nuances to make it through the hell that we're all going through, because every single person is going through hell unless you're Jeff Bezos.
What'd you have, Drew?
Well, one, I just wanted to build off of what Jim said, and my fiance said this best to me is just, when you're working from home, don't forget to also home from home. Don't forget to turn that off. And some strategies around that is actually close the computer lid, break down kind of the office thing if you need to, if you're setting up an office somewhere, turn it off, schedule things. We schedule a date night every Friday. And our friends are kind of like, why would you do that? You're in with each other 24/7. And it's like, well, it's so easy for me to be doing stand-up shows or speaking events every single night of the week. And we have to kind of say, no, this is the night that we spend together. And so I think scheduling those types of things can help. And of course, Wilson, can add to this, or maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but at least from my very limited understanding within positive psychology, social support is absolutely critical, as is gratitude. Gratitude is, they've done studies where if you keep a gratitude journal and write down 3 things every single day that you're grateful for over the course of a period of a couple weeks, it does start to create more positivity, more happiness. And I think when you're thinking about that, a question that I learned from another improviser is simply, what's not wrong with your life? Like, it doesn't have to be something that you're so like epically grateful for. It doesn't have to be the best. Oh, I'm so grateful because this amazing, I bought her Lamborghini or whatever. It could be, I'm grateful that, my family is all in one house, or I'm grateful that I've learned a new Ecamm live software technology that I can start to implement, or I'm grateful that I had Skyline chili earlier today. Shout out to anyone else from Cincinnati who loves Skyline. So, those small things can help. And thinking of that kind of same mentality, Jim, you asked a question of what can we be doing once things kind of change, or doing now for when things change. A speaker named Joey Coleman shared this thought with me, and he's like, I'm trying to think about, at least for myself, how can I make COVID and this isolation a time where I said, you know what, things were very, very tough, but I'm so happy that I did blank.
Right.
I'm so happy that I used that time to write a book. I'm so happy that I used that time to discover virtual a little bit more. I'm so happy I used that time to try a talk show. Or if you're kind of like starting to feel overwhelmed, to Leann's point, don't feel like you have to be doing a ton of other stuff because other people are. Just be, I'm so happy that I took 2 months for myself, where I relaxed most days, or I started reading books again, or I went for a walk, or I vegged out every day on Reddit until 2 a.m. But like I got to experience what that was like. Try to think about what's that thing that you can look back on and be, I'm so happy I did this during COVID-19.
Yeah, really
Yeah.
good suggestions.
Good.
Go ahead, Leighann.
Yeah, scheduling is important because there's no other schedule. You're not expected anywhere. If you could put a Zoom meeting on your calendar, you can put a date night on your calendar. Of course, you'd have to have a date. Otherwise, that's a crime.
I'll
But I
date you.
find
I'm dating. I am.
I actually have a little help in this area. If I've been at my computer too long, I have a cat and he'll come in and he'll look at me. That's the warning look. I get the warning look. Then he jumps up on my desk. He looks at me. When he starts walking across the keyboard, I'm like, you know what? You're right. I've been here too long. And he's usually dead on. Like I'm at that point where I'm like, oh, I'll just do one more thing. And then here he comes to walk across my keyboard. I'm like, yeah, I won't do one more thing tonight. I'll go and sit and not watch Star Trek with him. Because that's what he likes.
Right. It's okay to not be okay. And I think everyone has to, you have to give yourself that too. You can be as productive as you want, but it's okay to not, maybe it's not for everybody. Like it's okay to feel so, what the fuck, and do nothing.
We can all agree this is a giant planetary global what the fuck moment.
Yeah.
Wine makes everything better with Carole. All right.
Also, I would say, I love helping other people. We all do, right? We're of service. We're on stage. We're entertaining. We're coaching.
Oh, yeah.
Learning to ask for help and being vulnerable and honest. Like we all talk about authenticity, but my brand and my go-to personality is always happy and encouraging. And I've just said, you know what, screw it. Like I'm going to tell people exactly what I'm going through. And I write about it and I put it in my art. I put, this is the hell I'm going through. And this is what I found to inspire me. And if it helps you too, I'm grateful and I'm glad. So like being here today for me, this is something I'm super grateful for today.
Yeah.
Me too.
So,
I don't know why I got out of bed today, seriously. So
It's not always hour by hour, it's moment by moment. I'll have a great moment and a horrible moment and know that there's another moment coming and we can shape that and create it.
Jim, these suggestions from the panel are so good. I wish I had thought of them, actually.
I missed my calling.
I am
Wilson,
now
take
going
credit for all of it.
I am going to become a therapist because you said that, Wilson. That's my new
Okay,
job.
I'm giving you an honorary degree.
I'm going to be a chef/therapist.
I already got the chef thing down. All right, so guys, we are right up about the 2-hour mark, and I did want to give everyone a moment or two for whatever closing remarks they want to have, and we're going to go around to each of you to let you say what's happening. I did want to point out to the audience that I don't think this is a death knell for comedy because a lot of comics are saying it is. I think it's morphing. I think the Zoom shows and things of that nature are not going to go away anytime soon, but it's not going to replace comedy. It's going to be in addition to, just like I think I find silliness in this, the drive-in comedy spots that are popping up all over the country. While great in theory, not so great in actuality, but it's going to be part of the norm for a while. And we're all going to have to get used to new things popping in. But I do think that comedy will come back, and they'll come back stronger than ever, because underneath it all, people really do need to laugh and release. And that's a big part of this. So I wanted to kind of go around and see if you guys had any final thoughts. If you want to let people know where they can find you, if you got any new projects on the horizon, like a book you might have just written, you can let people know where to find it. So I want to start this out. I want to start with our center square, at least the center square on my computer, Mr. Al Martin. Can you tell people any final thoughts and anything you want to promote?
Yeah, I just think stay the course. If you need to do those Zoom shows, do them temporarily for now. I do think we're coming back, and we're going to be, as club owners, innovative and try to figure out ways to make it safe and workable. And buy my book. I did it on a dare, How I Built a Comedy Empire in 30 short years. It's on Amazon. It'll be in the bookstores whenever they open, and it'll be available in paperback as well shortly, in a couple of days.
Beautiful. I want to move over next to somebody who will be doing a Zoom show for me probably next Sunday, Miss Carole Montgomery. Carole.
I'll be on it.
What? We convinced her?
No, Lori's out tonight. Carole will be on next week.
This has been great, and I love all of you guys, and it's been great to hear what everyone. I do agree with both Al and Jim. I think look, if we could tomorrow, if everything went back to normal tomorrow, comedy would be exploded, because we all need that release that live comedy does. I think that, like I said at the beginning, you have to learn to adapt. This may be our future. You know, everyone's thinking, oh, you know, I mean, I still have a couple of dates in the summertime that haven't been canceled. They're not in the new tri-state area. You know, you'll know, because I'll post it on Facebook, whether or not it happens, and they're planning on doing the social distancing and all that stuff. But we have to be aware of the fact that this is our new norm, and it could be this way for 6 months. It could be this way for a year. I do think live comedy will come back, because I think people like Al are trying their damnedest to figure out how to do this. And when it comes back, it'll be great. But you have to understand that, like Leighann said, this is our first pandemic. We're all doing this by the seat of our pants. We have no idea what's going on. So just try to stay creative any way you can. You know, watch and what. You know what? Like I was thinking, I was quoting. I was quoting Kevin Meaney a couple of days ago. The I don't care. I was like, I have to watch that again, because that's one of the funniest Tonight shows ever done. His first Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. Watch. We're all comedians because we love comedy. I mean, the other thing I miss, and everyone knows this because everyone knows my laugh, is watching my friends. Because when I laugh like a tugboat is coming in, and you know, and we not only do we like being comedians, we like to laugh. So go out, watch comedy, you know, just sit back and be an audience for a while and support your friends. We will get through this. I'm just going to go home and I'm going to drink this tonight. And I want to thank the Academy.
There you go. Let me move up to Mr. Wilson. Any final parting thoughts?
Yeah. You know, like a couple of other people have said, this is our first pandemic. So your feelings, whatever they are valid. And but if they're so intense to the point that they're causing problems for you or they're causing you anguish, then that's when you need to reach out. And that could just be to friends and family and people you trust, or it could be, you know, time to seek therapy. So take a look at the list I put together. And if you have if anyone here attending has any further questions about that, I put my email in the chat box and feel free to email me.
All right. Ms. Leighann Lord, any final thoughts?
Yeah. Because I'm assuming these are mostly younger comics, you know, or folk in the industry who are watching this or who are here. Through whatever is going on, find a way to feed your creativity. You know, that you could be resting, you could be writing, you could be reaching out. And none of those things are mutually exclusive. You know, who do you want to be when we're open up again? You know, if you're thinking about planning for the future, you know, that's what you do. And in some ways, comedy hasn't changed in this crucial way. It's always been a hustle. Okay, it's always been hard for one reason or another. The pandemic is just a cherry on top. Okay, the hustle switched to my house. Okay, I'm a hustle here. You know, so your work ethic, your way of moving through things is just being tested in a different way. How do you want to come out of the fire? What do you want to look like when you're out?
Yep. All right, Ms. Deena, what sage words do you have?
First of all, it's hard to top Leighann. I don't want to follow her. No. I am actually honored to follow and be.
Which would happen in a comedy club. How many of us had to follow Chris Rock?
Yeah.
You know, Damon Wayans.
Joe Rogan.
So you're on Fireball.
I'm on. Yeah.
Eddie Murphy, by the way.
Yeah.
Shit.
Leighann Lord. You're my Eddie Murphy.
Wow. I'm raw.
And delirious.
Yes, I'm more delirious than raw.
We're all a bit delirious these days. So my number one word would be connect. Like truly stay connected. People. Okay, it's not one word. And I go back to the tagline that Jim and I came up with, which is celebrate laughter, celebrate hope, and celebrate community. So whatever level you're at, whatever industry you're at, just connecting with people and going back to what drives you and sharing it, being of service, asking for what you need, and giving what you can.
All right. Drew.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you to Jim and the entire panel, everyone joining. Fantastic program. I think a lot of things to learn, to take away, hopefully some inspiration, hopefully some actionable ideas, hopefully maybe even some new connections as well. And so I think the engineer in me and project manager in me can't go to any meeting and not think about next steps. So I'd encourage you to think about what singular action are you going to take as a result of having attended today or having watched this a little bit later. Is it that you are going to try a virtual mic? Is it that you're going to give something like Ecamm Live a go? Is it that you're going to be okay when sirens pass by while you're talking, because it happens all the time here in New York South? Is it that you're going to be a little bit more lenient with yourself during these challenging times? What thing about that one action that you want to take as a result of the 2 hours that we spent together? Certainly, if people have questions around the technology side, whether it's a specific show that you want to try to put up or just help with something or questions about something, never more than ever have I felt like that computer science degree is finally coming back in handy again. So you can help me use it by reaching out, asking those questions. I'll share my email once again in the chat. My social media handle this side is @DrewTarvin, so you can reach me on any social media there, but more than happy to talk about any of that. And then we also we're doing some virtual open mics, some virtual improv drop-ins, etc. So if you're like, where do I even go for some of this stuff? You can kind of reach out to me, and happy to share at least some of the stuff that we're doing or point you in the direction of other places that are doing it as well.
All right, and I also need to give him a plug because he wouldn't do it for himself. I actually got to work with Drew via Zoom about, I want to say 2 weeks ago now, when the festival first opened up. And he's very funny. So if you have shows and you're looking for someone to bring in who you haven't seen before, Drew is a very funny man to bring into your show. All right,
my own stand-up mic.
Yeah, there you go.
Techie and funny.
There you go.
I
love
there.
that combination.
Yeah, Lori, what you got?
What I've learned in life through every curveball that's been sent to me, every trauma and tribulation, I've always, in retrospect, looked back on it and gave thanks for it, because I grew and I became better because of it. And I really think that that's going to happen for all of us. We're going to say, thank God for that time. And with that being said, like, don't wait to look back on it. It's just fine. I'll always say that, there's 24 hours in a day. So for 23 hours and 55 minutes, you can feel negative and bad about it and scared and anxiety, but give yourself 5 minutes to find the bright spots and give thanks for it, for how you can learn and grow. With producing, whether you're producing online, there's differences, but you still have to always keep your professionalism. Remember how you're marketing and branding yourself, and you always have to look at the bigger picture. So you have your one goal with your own self of getting on stage, but also look at the bigger picture from every angle, from every aspect. Look at it from the audience's perspective, from the other comedian's perspective, and everything. And that's how you build your shows.
Yeah. I want to thank all our panel for being here. I want to kind of leave you guys with one thought that struck me when I put the panel together. Someone asked me why you put it together, and the major reason why I want to put this panel together is to kind of get people to not fear the unknown and what's coming forward. And that's a big part of it. I remember when I was a whopping 20-year-old comedian in New York City, I got a call from Sam Kennison, who I met, asking me to fill in for a gig that he was doing. And I went all the way out to Brooklyn to a club called Diamonds. And anybody is from Brooklyn back then, Diamonds was a notorious strip club that I had no idea that was a strip club. And I get there, and it's the strip club, and He calls me up on the phone saying, I'm going to be about an hour late, so you got to go longer. And I'm there like, I've never done anything outside of the comedy club. I don't know how to do this. And he stopped me and went, you're funny. You'll figure it out. And that struck with me my whole career. You're funny, you'll figure it out. And I've done shows at old age homes, and I'm funny and I figured it out. I've done shows in comedy clubs, and funny and I figured it out. Corporate shows, I'm funny and I figured it out. Zoom shows, I'm funny and I figured it out.
Make that a t-shirt.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, you really should make that a
Part of
t-shirt.
your brand.
And everybody, you're funny, you will figure this shit out. All right, and we're all gonna come back together. And when I see you guys on the other side of this at Broadway Comedy Club, I'm looking forward to buying you guys a beer. All right, everybody, thanks to our panel. We'll put this online so we can get help to more comics. Thank you all so much. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
You guys.
Great discussion today.
Yeah, this was great.
Safe chat.
Bye, everybody.
One by
Exactly.
one. One by one, we leave.
This shit out. All right, and Comedy Club. I'm looking forward to buying you guys a beer. All right, everybody, thanks to our panel. We'll put this online so we can get help to more comics. Thank you all so much. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.